This story is not well known in America, but it's definitely worth listening to. In October 2019, the Netherlands was shaken by a discovery that sounded too strange to be real. In the quiet village of Ruinerwold, surrounded by open fields, wind and silence, a family was found that had been living in complete isolation for years. What at first seemed like a rural mystery slowly unfolded into one of the most disturbing stories the country had ever heard. A story about faith, control, fear, and the fragile boundaries of the human mind. On an old, remote farm, a father and his children had lived hidden from the world. From the outside, nothing appeared unusual. The grass was mowed, the fences stood upright, and sometimes lights flickered behind the curtains. But behind those walls was another world, one that time had forgotten. The father believed the world was impure, doomed even, and that only his family could survive the coming end. He told his children that society was corrupt, that people outside were servants of evil, and that their duty was to stay pure and prepare for the new beginning. What started as conviction grew into a complete separation from reality. The children, born into that life, had never gone to school. They had never met other children. They learned to read from the Bible and worked the land from dawn to dusk, their lives shaped by their father's rules and fears. For years, no one suspected anything. In small Dutch villages, privacy is respected. People keep to themselves. If a farm looked quiet, it was simply a quiet farm. But one night, everything changed. One of the sons, by then an adult, managed to escape. He walked for hours through the dark, barefoot, frightened, until he reached a small local bar. He looked disoriented, malnourished, and confused. He told the bartender he had been living in captivity for years, that his brothers and sisters were still on the farm, and that his father believed the end of the world was near. At first, no one believed him. It sounded like a story from a movie. But the police were called, and what they found behind that farm door was beyond imagination. Inside were several grown children, weak and pale, living in rooms that seemed frozen in another decade. There were old jars of food, dusty furniture, and religious writings pinned to the walls. The rooms were sealed, soundproofed in places, as if no one was ever meant to hear or see them again. It was not a scene of violence, but of deep, haunting silence, the kind that tells of years gone by without laughter or outside voices. When the news broke, the country was stunned. How could this happen in modern Europe, in a connected world where every person is registered, every child expected at school? Journalists called it the family of Ruinerwold, and soon the whole nation wanted to know, how could a single man hold so much power over others for so long? Psychologists and sociologists began studying the case. They explained how social isolation can reshape a person's mind, how belief can turn into imprisonment when no one is left to question it. In groups like this, one leader becomes the sole source of truth. Fear replaces freedom, and obedience becomes a way to survive. The children of Ruinerwold grew up in a world where the only reality they knew was the one their father created. The father himself, described as deeply religious but also controlling, saw himself as chosen, a man called to protect his family from the evils of the world. His charisma and absolute authority turned faith into a cage. He demanded silence, obedience, and devotion. He convinced his children that stepping outside the farm would bring ruin, that they would die or be taken by dark forces. And so they stayed, even when the world beyond their fields kept changing, evolving, connecting. When they were finally freed, the children discovered not only the outside world, but time itself. They had missed decades. Simple things like traffic, supermarkets, phones felt alien. They had to learn everything anew: how to travel, how to speak to strangers, how to trust. Each step into freedom was both liberation and shock. The story of Ruinerwold quickly became more than a crime report. It turned into a mirror for society, raising questions about how easily isolation can grow unnoticed even in modern times. How did no one see the signs? How did systems designed to protect people fail for so long? And perhaps the hardest question of all, how can faith, something meant to bring comfort and meaning, become something that imprisons and destroys? Educators and researchers began using the case in schools and universities. It became an example in lessons about psychology, sociology, and critical thinking. Students discussed how power dynamics work inside closed groups, how fear maintains control, and why communication with the outside world is essential for mental health. The Ruinerwold case showed painfully but clearly that education and open dialogue are the strongest defense against manipulation. Years later, the farm still stands, quiet, empty, a place where the wind hums through broken windows. Locals say it feels heavy there, like the air still carries the weight of silence. But it also stands as a reminder that no darkness lasts forever, that truth finds its way out, even from the most hidden corners. The story of the Ruinerwold family is not just about tragedy, it is also about survival, resilience, and the enduring human need to be free. It teaches us that isolation can happen anywhere, behind closed doors, inside families, or even within our own minds, and that breaking free starts with a single, powerful act, daring to speak. And maybe that's the most haunting lesson of all, that for years no one heard them, until one voice finally stepped into the light. Don't forget to subscribe.